Welcome back from the break. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. You're with us live on NewsX. The second largest and trading city of China has now been under strict lockdown for more than a month. This has led to increase in public agitation as food shortage is realized as the mass protests erupt in Shanghai over the lockdown. China has again resorted to cheap tricks. Xi government has now banned protest videos to hide its failure from the world. 3 years since COVID hit, Shanghai and the rest of the world seem to be losing patience over COVID spread. Is it time China accepts its errors and ensures its people's suffering ends? What is China hiding is the big question. Joining us at this point live is Robinder Sachdev, international affairs expert. We also have Major General P.K. Sehgal, global strategic and defense analyst, joining us live. Lieutenant General Rajinder Singh, strategic affairs analyst, is live with us. Professor Madhav Nalapat, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, is also with us live. Professor Nalapat, it seems China has not learnt any lessons. They're still cracking down on their citizens. They're still censoring them. They're still not allowing their voices to be heard. What explains this?
Well, I'd like to point out that this has been common behavior of whoever has ruled in the old days it was called the Celestial Kingdom, whoever has ruled that. And the Communist Party of China is simply continuing that tradition of cracking down on anybody who does not agree with it. I'd like to say that in 2020, almost the entire world went into a very severe lockdown. Basically, they followed the advice of the WHO, which, as we all know, completely goes by whatever signals it gets from Beijing. So, essentially, this was a strategy designed by the Chinese, but implemented even more thoroughly in countries like the United States and other locations. And it had a debilitating effect on the economy. I'm happy to say that in 2021, India did not fall into that trap. Prime Minister Modi certainly did not fall into the WHO trap, and he rejected the idea of a general lockdown and left it to individual administrations to decide. It is a far more sensible policy. In Manipal campus, for example, the outbreak of COVID-19 was controlled through micro lockdowns, not even a full lockdown of the campus, micro lockdowns. And that would have been the way to go in the beginning, but we went into a full lockdown, not with the whole country and so many other countries, following the advice of the WHO. Fortunately, Prime Minister Modi did not follow that advice in 2021, certainly not in 2022, although 2021 was a very bad year from the point of view of the incidence of COVID. There were a huge number of cases, but the government of India refused to be stampeded into another lockdown. China has gone into this kind of a massive lockdown in some places and is signaling to the WHO, basically, try and make sure the whole world goes into lockdown. This time around, I think very few countries in the world are going to follow China into any kind of lockdown. And China also, remember, it's a specific lockdown. In my personal view, this kind of a strategy does not help at all. What you needed from the very beginning was a focus on pharmaceuticals and therapeutics, and the WHO completely ignored that and focused only on vaccines. Incidentally, very interestingly, the most expensive vaccines and not the cheaper vaccines made in India. WHO sat on the Indian vaccine for so long that it was clear that the signaling was coming from elsewhere, and we know where it was coming from because the Chinese vaccines were sanctioned in a jiffy. The Indian vaccine, which was much better, as field studies will show, was not sanctioned for a long time. So the reality is, frankly, China has got into a wrong strategy. They have again tried to whip up a hysteria globally about COVID-19. That has failed. And now, quite frankly, inside China, the Chinese people are no longer buying this theory that COVID-19 is more deadly than AIDS, more deadly than hydrophobia, more deadly than smallpox, all put together. It's not buying that, and the Chinese public is reacting. I think the Chinese government is very unwise in cracking down on justified dissent. the sooner the Chinese government realizes that it has to be sensible in dealing with the pandemic, like, for example, India under Prime Minister Modi has been, the better it will be. And very interestingly, the one country that has completely followed China, the Chinese rule book, the WHO rule book, is a country that is not recognized by either China or the WHO, which is Taiwan. Taiwan is completely, blindly following the Chinese model, and in my view, they have made a mistake as well.
Okay, let me bring in Lieutenant General Rajinder Singh at this point. General Rajinder Singh, now the fact is there is this continued Chinese pushback against Xi, which keeps cropping up now and again, and now it's over, the fact that there is this stringent lockdown being imposed, once again dictatorial decisions being taken, extreme decisions being taken by the Chinese administration, and people are resenting, people are upset, and they're speaking out, speaking up, but are being muted as always by the Chinese administrations. How long will this continue, or is this just symptomatic of the Chinese state?
I think what the Chinese government is doing at present is a gross overreaction to whatever has happened. The number of cases which have come up in China today are not all that alarming, and yet they have gone in for a massive lockdown in their biggest city of Shanghai. And they are doing it in two phases. One half of Shanghai is doing the lockdown for about a week, and the other half for another week. Now, this has created a total discontentment against the establishment. And what the excuse is being given is that they are feeling that China must not go the Hong Kong way. In Hong Kong, of late, there has been an upsurge of the COVID pandemic, and a large number of older people, that is over 70, have actually been falling prey to this. And what the Chinese want to do is that they do not want to take any chances. I don't read anything more than this as far as China is concerned. And like Professor Nalpat was saying, that these kind of actions by China are nothing new. They are known for being quite autocratic, taking harsh measures, not worrying about the hardships of their own people. And I think what they are doing now are actually a step in that direction only. I think soon they will realize that all this has been a gross overreaction, because I do not think that the kind of pandemic that they are having in China is really going to make is going to be really all that alarming.
Okay, let me also quickly rope in Major General Sehgal at this point. Major General Sehgal, do you also believe that this is simply overreaction by China? This is just examples of the extreme steps that they take, extreme maneuvering that they do, not just vis-a-vis COVID, but in general, it's a practice of the state. And the fact is, as always, they're clamping down on dissent. But for how long, Major General Sehgal? Major General Sehgal, you're on mute.
I am glad that China and the Chinese Communist Party are clamping down on the voice of dissent and voice of the people, because sooner than later the people are going to rebel against them. It's high time that the people start challenging the state and not accept the stupidities that they're being they're being forced to bear. Shanghai is a city of 26 million. It caters for 3.3% of China's GDP. All restaurants, all malls have been locked down. People have run out of food. People have run out of medicine. Those who've got chronic sickness are being denied any sort of treatment. So this is causing a huge amount of consternation. huge amount of worry and huge amount of anger amongst the people. The sooner this anger comes out into the streets and busts out in the open, it will be good for China, it will be good for the world. It's time that the Communist Party is made to understand that people matter. At present, the Communist Party of China and Xi Jinping think that they are the only sensible people and everybody else is insane. And it's he and he alone who matters. Essentially, all autocrats the world over, whether it was Stalin, whether it was Mussolini, whether it is Mao Zedong, whether it is Xi Jinping or for Putin, for that matter, they feel they are the only ones who write. There are virtually no checks and balances on them. And it's time that people do make them feel that there ought to be checks and balances. People's voices must be heard, given the type of social media that is available, irrespective of the number of restrictions that the Chinese bring in, the cyber security brought in, the cyber. In fact, every single citizen of China is being screened and being looked into. All that notwithstanding, it's a very essential that people of China get to know what is really happening. They also realize that Sinovac vaccine is of no good. China is now buying in a very large manner Pfizer of America, and they're buying vaccines of the other countries, fully knowing that their Sinovac was an absolute dud. Most of the countries rejected it, and it's not being effective on their own people. In fact, this city, which is a city of 26 million, has been under a lockdown of some sort or the other for over a month now. And people are absolutely and totally fed up. And it is time that the Communist Party realizes the gravest mistake that is committing. Otherwise, sooner than later, the Arab Spring that started in the Middle East, and the Chinese have always been worried about that, is bound to come on to China also. And the Chinese will find it extremely difficult at that point of time to deal with it.
Yes, absolutely. Let me also, in fact, quickly get in Rabinder Sachdev at this point. Rabinder Sachdev, now this is, of course, another revolt that's happening in China over the lockdown. How long will the people be suppressed in this manner? Do you believe there is a tipping point being reached, or are we still far from that?
That's a great question, Uday, and thank you. I do think that what is happening now is going to will be a contributory vector to a tipping point. There are other issues also which are there in China. Some of their policies of social engineering right now, trying to curb the technology industry. On the one hand, it's an amazing thing. They're reducing mobile gaming for children only 3 hours in a week. That's amazing. All tutoring companies overnight have to become a not-for-profit company versus a profit company. Fair enough, but that's leading to ripples in the technology sector also, right? So this will be adding to those ripples, I would say. Now, talking specifically COVID, see what I think is happening. There are two things. One, China wants to make its COVID management a world example, okay? So that it can claim to the world that it managed COVID the best amongst all countries or all systems, be it democracies, capitalist countries, etc. So it's the Chinese system, right? The Chinese alternative model of governance in a country. So that zero COVID, look here, we managed it so well. That's one. Second is, I think what's happening, and I was reading about it some time ago also, there's a mismatch between what she says and what the local officials do. And that is, of course, the downside of, authoritarian regimes and groupthink. So when she says we want zero COVID, all the local officials, the governors and the municipal officials, go the extra mile to make sure that they're being overly patriotic, zealous, and zero COVID in their, in their domain areas. So that is also happening. I think when they're doing. Otherwise, if you look at the numbers are very low. But to, I think, Professor Lalaka's point and our other panelist's point, she issued a statement, I think, yesterday or day before, where it shows that he's kind of realizing the protest when he said that our approach should be maximum protection at a minimum cost, right? So he's realizing that there are costs to civic life, okay, and to civic freedoms. And I think that's the reason he's added this, this thing that okay, there will be some cost, but we got to come to a balance of some sorts rather than going black and white, that, okay, zero COVID, that's it, right? So they have to come to that mix. Now, A couple of other points. Yeah. So it's officials, on the lower ground who are being overzealous, trying to be 100% perfect for their dictatorial bosses. This will no doubt add to the bigger question which you raised, that when will there be a tipping point? We do not know when a tipping point will be there, but there are, domains in which there is a bubble of happening. But by the way, regarding COVID and the shutdowns and the lockdowns, apparently the Chinese people have been very welcoming, or they look at it as their patriotic duty, okay, that they are going through. But maybe now what has happened, this time now what's happening is that they're realizing that things are not, it's so much strict lockdowns are not needed, curbing of freedoms is not needed. That's why they're protesting in their, in their communities and their home societies from the Indian context or apartment complex areas. The children are being separated from mothers, right? If a mom is a COVID and a 2-year-old, and there are reports of 3-month-old child being sent to a separate, quarantine, and the mother being sent to a separate one. They cannot even know what's happening with the other. So there are such, harsh human stories. But on the other hand, if you look at the real numbers, the last 1 year, just recently, I think on 19th March, the first COVID death occurred in China after 1 year, more than a year. And I think right now it's probably 2 deaths, or a little more maybe. And I think General Sehgal was saying, and these both were also 70 plus individuals who had other ailments too, right? So the point is, if you look in a sensible way, maybe there are questions to how China is managing its COVID, the pandemic, but China wants to project it. And during the Beijing Olympics also, that it has mastered the art of, managing pandemics better than Western democracies.
Okay. Let me quickly go back to Professor Nalapad at this point on, on the impact that this is going to be having in China going ahead. Do you believe it's a tipping point being reached, or are we far from that, Professor Nalapad? And also, how long will these brutal lockdowns continue?
Look, that depends on General Secretary Xi Jinping. But in my personal view, what you're seeing on the streets now is a general disaffection caused by very much slower economic growth, caused by worry that a lot of industries and industrial units are moving out of China very ostentatiously, and that new industries are finding it difficult to come in. And a lot of worry among the members of the Communist Party also, that, they have, for decades, they have cultivated very powerful lobbies in the United States, in Europe, etc. But somehow these lobbies have not been very effective, especially, after the pandemic. After the pandemic, which in the opinion of many people, including myself, it was made much worse by the fact that there was systematic concealment of information by the Chinese authorities. And the WHO, I'm sorry to say, earns a 0 mark for any effort to uncover the truth of the pandemic. The WHO was acting virtually as a PR agency for the People's Republic of China, and just repeated what the PRC wanted it to repeat. And as someone who has immense respect for the United Nations and for the good work that organization has done, I'm sorry that the WHO has brought the discredit, in the UN system by its activity. So I'd like to say that there are a lot of issues now that are facing General Secretary Xi, and he has nowhere to turn to, because for the last 4 or 5 years, he has concentrated every bit of power in his own hands. Whether it is going to a movie, going to a sports theater, a dance, a music performance, economics, politics, health, anything, you name it. Xi is in final charge. No one else except Xi. So now the people are holding him accountable for everything that goes wrong in China. And frankly, I think he must be realizing the mistake he has made. If you try and accumulate too much power, you end up with no power.
Okay, General Rajinder Singh, quick word to you. Then I have to quickly move on to some other news coming in. Last word.
Yes. Actually, I have a different opinion regarding whether this is the tipping point. Because for last very many years, we had been hearing about China's discontentment, disparity between their between the east and the west portions of China. But China has, over a period of time, has really developed quite well. And you cannot deny the fact that they have really been able to bring up the overall standards of their people. This discontentment which is there, I think, is localized. This discontentment has also been because of the fact that Shanghai is one of those cities where people are used to a lot of goodies in their living, and they are feeling the pinch at the moment. I don't think it is going to really create a kind of a situation in which there will be a tipping point against the government, or this will be the start of the end of the communist rule. I don't think that is going to take place. I think what China has done up till now, there is certainly no denying the fact that it is a gross overreaction to a kind of a problem which was very minute. Even their numbers are not very big, and yet they have reacted in a kind of a manner which was highly unwarranted. And I think people are today better educated.
Okay. Okay, I have to move on. We're getting some other breaking news coming in. My thanks to all of our guests for joining us on this debate.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.